Hello, everybody. Welcome back to coverage of MXP LA and the Modern 20K event. My name's Hayu. I'm here with the person who has top hated so many PTs in the last few months that it's actually unbelievable. Jason Yee. Jason, welcome to the broadcast. How are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for having me. Modern is a pretty fun format right now, I think. Excited to be casting.
Perfect. Well, before we get into round number 5 here at MXP LA, we have to give, of course, a shout out to our sponsors. There you go. You can see the schedule for the weekend. We are on Saturday, 8 rounds of Swiss today. 6-2 record is going to make it to Sunday, and this event is brought to you. This stream, at least, is brought to you by Heavy Play, being held, of course, hosted by Laughing Dragon in LA. And thank you so much to TVU Network as well, our internet provider sponsor. Jason, so you say Modern's pretty fun right now. I know you just came off a top 8 at PT Nadu. I'm sure it was not officially called PT Nadu, but let's be honest. you know?
Yeah. We all know what's defining the format right now and what's likely to get banned in about a week's time.
Well, today let's find out if there's going to be a last hurrah perhaps for the bird, or I think we've been seeing a lot of bowmasters on the stream as well. So we are going to go down to our round number 5 feature match in just a moment, and we have some pretty cool decks lined up for you. On the one side we have Bruce Lee with Dimir Murktide, which is the new Murktide with Psychic Frog, 4 copies of in the main. And then on the other side, we have Edwin Ebon. And I think we've already seen a little bit of Edwin on the screen with this super cool, very innovative Naya Aggro. I mean, it's billed as Naya Aggro, Jason, but it has a bit of a combo element in it.
Yeah. It's a very cool list, combining some of the standard Boros energy stuff you might see in other decks. Like we've seen a bunch of Mardu energy lists on stream today, with cards like Ajani, Flage, Guide of Souls, Amtraptor, all of the good MH3 cards. But then also leveraging the fact that you already kind of want to play Goblin Bombardment to play this combo finish in the deck for perhaps some of the more unfair matchups, with Safi Eric's daughter and Extraction Specialist, letting you essentially just keep looping those two creatures with a free sack outlet in Goblin Bombardment in order to just ping your opponent down from however much life they might have.
This is super cool, by the way. And for those of you out there who might not be as familiar with Safi Eric's daughter as I was not before coming into today, she's a 2/2. And when she comes in, she has the ability sacrifice Safi Eric's daughter. When target creature is put into your graveyard this turn, return that card to the battlefield. And Jason, I assume that this is with the extraction specialist. That is going to you can target. I assume that Safi with the specialist trigger.
So basically what happens is, let's say there's a Safi in your graveyard. You play your Extraction Specialist, it enters, it gets back your Safi, then you sack your Safi to its own ability, to targeting your Extraction Specialist, and then you sacrifice your Extraction Specialist to presumably the Goblin Bombardment you have on the battlefield. Then Safi will
Right.
trigger, which will bring back the Extraction Specialist, and the Extraction Specialist will bring back Safi again. And you just keep going from there, looping that loop until your opponent is dead. And Extraction Specialist also just nicely a good value card in this deck, presumably, with powerful cards like Guide of Souls, Ajani, Amtraptor sort of to bring back. Amtraptor, unfortunately, you won't get the Cascade-ish trigger from it, because that only happens if you cast from hand, but you still will get 2 energy at least.
Okay. All right. So let's see how it goes here in game number 1. We have Edwin on the play, leading out with Wooded Foothills, and both players nothing to do on turn 1, at least in their turn. Edwin is going to go and fetch up something with that Wooded Foothills, and in this matchup, Jason, with Dimir against this Naya aggro deck, how are we expecting the dynamics to be?
So the Dimir deck is really trying to do what it's always trying to do, right? Stick one big threat, either the new Psychic Frog card we got from MH3 or like a Murktide. And then after establishing that threat, or while establishing that threat, just throw a bunch of interaction spells at the opponent, right? Counter spells, removal spells, just leveraging these big threats that will finish the game quickly in the case of Murktide, or just provide you a stream of card advantage in the case of Psychic Frog, plus just efficient removal across the board to close the game out pretty quickly. And on the other hand, the Naya Aggro deck, or Naya Aggro combo deck, and in some senses is trying to, play like these Boros, Mardu mid-range decks that we've seen, these energy decks, just playing the best cards from MH3, the most efficient cards at getting the opponent's life total down pretty quick, while also pressuring the opponent through some false tempo from the combo. Like I suspect the combo here is not meant as a like I am going to go for this every single game kind of deal,
Right.
right? It's more
Right.
meant as a threat that the opponent always has to like keep in the back of their mind. They could get comboed at any moment, right? Now here we already see one of the pieces, Goblin Bombardment, hitting the field. Now, if there's a Safi Eric's-daughter and an extraction specialist to follow that up, the game could just end on the spot. So like Bruce might need to save some interaction for that, and that might stress his plans enough that the energy kills, or like all the good energy cards, can just finish the game by themselves.
We got to take a little peek at Edwin's hand there, and seems like he's a little bit flooded here in game number one, having gotten that Goblin Bombardment down, and it is Bruce who's going to be on the attacks first with Psychic Frog, getting in, pitching a land, making it a little bit bigger. And of course, Psychic Frog does have a very sweet line of text on it when it deals damage to your opponent. You get to draw a card. So here comes that flood of card advantage you were talking about. And I think I see a Bowmasters in hand there for Bruce, as well as Force of Negation. So plenty of interaction up for Bruce as well.
The Bowmaster is probably not going to be the most impactful in this matchup. It can ping down some X1s, but no extra card draw that I can see in the Naya deck. But just some nice flash threats is just appreciated when you want to hold up your mana for interaction, for protecting your snowbally threat.
Yeah. Honestly, like this Naya deck, the combo, super cool. Of course, I know, Jason, you're partial to a little bit of combo yourself, but
Indeed.
I am just looking at the Psychic Frog thinking, I would love to be playing a Psychic Frog right now.
Yeah, it feels so good to just have a threat that draws you an extra card every turn as you just rip apart your opponent's game plan. Is that a
Yeah,
Safi that's just been milled?
I think so. I think that's a Safi. And you see Bruce taking a good look at it. Okay, just gotta remember what this one does. And that is going into the graveyard. Thanks, I think, to a Surveil and the Lush Portico that we saw Edwin get there. And Jason, these Surveil lands have been so sweet.
Yeah, and that mill is actually huge. It looks like Edwin either doesn't have the extraction specialist or maybe just isn't going for it. But putting that Safi in the graveyard is just about as good as putting it into play for combo purposes, because the extraction specialist does get to reanimate the Safi.
Right. So if a Safi hits the battlefield right now and Bruce doesn't have anything, for it, that's just it, right?
Yeah, and I think I can see the extraction specialist in the hand. I couldn't quite catch all the cards, but I think the
Yeah,
combo
it's
is
that.
live,
It's
and
that, Jason.
yeah, and Edwin's just looking for a good opportunity, a good window to resolve this.
Right. And Bruce does have the counter spell in hand as well as the force of negation. So Edwin gonna try and pick a spot. Very smart play here. Pitching Bowmasters to the Psychic Frog. Don't need that one. What a power move.
Yeah, it looks like Bruce has figured that a +1/+1 counter for 0 mana is probably going to be better than the 2/1/1s for 2 mana.
That's why we have you here on this stream, Jason, to do the maths. Edwin gonna go fetching, and at some point, Edwin has to go for it, right? Like, what? How is Edwin gonna deal with this Psychic Frog?
Yeah, he doesn't have infinite time. It looks like there's 6 or 7 cards. I couldn't quite count. in Bruce's hand, and each of those cards does represent like a point of damage theoretically on the Psychic Frog when it comes down to like calculating lethal. So
Right.
Edwin really only has like 2 turns, if that.
So Edwin gets the Ether Hub down, energy starts going. I believe there is a prismatic ending in hand. So we could see that here trying to just say, okay, what do you have? Are you going to protect the Psychic Frog?
Spell
S-
Snare.
Oh, okay.
Pretty efficient answer here. Still leaves 3 mana up to interact with force, with whatever. And I think there's a subtlety in Bruce's hand. So this combo is going to be pretty hard to push through.
Yeah, I think there's still a straight up counter spell as well. So this there are layers upon layers of protection here for Bruce, who's sat behind the Psychic Frog at a healthy 17 life. Edwin down to 12. And you can see Edwin trying to figure it out. Do I have to go for it now? There it is. What do you have? I don't think Edwin was really surprised there, Jason.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty face up that there's something happening when your opponent is passing with 4 mana every turn and discards a Bowmasters to their Psychic Frog.
Yeah, so this frog currently a 3/4. 3/4, is that right?
Yes, 3/4.
Yeah. And still, as you say, Bruce with a bunch of cards in hand, I believe at least 3 cards in hand, maybe 4 still before the draw step. Puts another Bowmasters in the bin. Filling out that
Yeah,
graveyard nicely should a Murktide come.
I have to assume this is basically game over now because I think Edwin only has lands in hand, maybe like one spell. Meanwhile, Bruce has, we know, Force of Negation and Subtlety in hand, which is pretty good at handling whatever Edwin can throw his way. So this frog should be
Hmm.
able to just close out the game in 2 big swings.
And Bruce is actually going to be pretty patient here, not growing the frog, just saying, okay, take 3. And, as someone who likes to dabble in control myself, I love that. I love that Bruce is saying, yeah, I think I have inevitability. I'm not going to give up the resources here. Oh, not the spell snap for Johnny. I'm so happy that Martin is a main deck spell snap format.
Yeah, it's really the kind of tool that the blue-black deck really wants, right? Like some way to turn your card advantage from Psychic Frog into very efficient trades, right? Like you're literally trading 1 mana for 2 mana. Obviously, it's somewhat narrow, but you have a lot of answers in your deck, so it's kind of fine for some of your answers to be narrow as long as they're efficient.
Wow, these oil slick lands are all the rage at MXPLA. Like, we've
I have
seen
no
quite a
idea
few
which one
players
that
with
is.
that. I'll give you one guess, Jason.
Well, I don't know. I think
It's
I
two out of 5. Come on,
yeah,
you
yeah,
can you can
50-50. I think Island, I think I can barely. Oh, now that it's sideways and there's that shine, I can barely make out the symbol.
It is in fact an island, and it is in fact game. Edwin scoops it up, can't beat the frog, and we are going to game number 2 with Bruce and Dimir Murktide up a game. And Jason, it's kind of exactly what you were talking about before we started. Got that one threat down, the frog, and then Bruce just sat behind it every turn with the counter spells, and Edwin with a little bit of a mulligan just couldn't really keep up there.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly the kind of game that Dimir Murktide or Frog Tide wants to play. Like it's actually much easier to manage when your opponent is just like trying to assemble a combo because you can generally just interact at like one point and disrupt their whole plan, rather than when the Naya Aggro deck is going to play more like the aggro hat, playing um, efficient cards that stand on their own, like Guide of Souls or Raptor, rather than like these more narrow combo cards. It'll be interesting to see how Edwin sideboards here. Looks like cutting all 4 of the Amped Raptors. Probably
Okay.
don't want those against the spell snares that he saw in game 1. I assume he's going to bring in the 3 Path to Exiles to deal with those big threats on Bruce's side, plus maybe the lanterns for Murktide.
Yeah, we did see the paths, the three paths come in, and I think that was one lantern coming in for the four copies of Amped Raptor. So, Edwin, as you say, Amped Raptor, not great against the spell snares, not great against Bowmasters, so that is getting cut. And the rest of the sideboard not really that useful here. Cast into the fire, harsh mental, and four obsidian charmor, which maybe tells you a little bit about what Edwin was thinking that this metagame was going to be. Let's have a look at what Bruce has available. Some copies of Consigned to Memory, Nile Spell Bombs, two Toxic Deluge, two more Subtleties, Harbingers of the Seas, Break the Ice, Stern Scolding. So I didn't get quite a very good look there at what Bruce was bringing in, but we can maybe think about seeing these Stern Scoldings at least,
I
Jason, and
definitely
maybe some
saw
Toxic Deluges.
I definitely saw the Stern Scoldings get put in, or at least one of them, and I would assume both. Nile
Mm,
Spellblom does stop the combo because, it uses the graveyard. The Safi and the Extraction Specialist are both going to be entering and leaving the graveyard many times during the combo. Um,
right.
and also, just if you know your opponent is playing Safi and Extraction Specialist, even if they aren't comboing, both of those still like having access to the graveyard. So Nile Spellbomb will be useful there. Um,
Okay.
Otherwise, maybe the Deluge, and that helps keep up with the big boards that like Ajani and Guide of Souls can put out. But it's also not the greatest at preventing the combo. So tough choice there.
Y- Yeah, it's very interesting. I would love to pick Edwin's brain and just kind of get his view on like what the difference between the two game plans, right? Because I mean, that time obviously we saw the draw that was more trying to do the combo, but I wonder if this is like 80% an aggro deck with a random combo in it, or whether this is, more of a 50-50 situation, Jason.
Yeah, some of the big power of like having a combo available to you and also having a coherent plan B, right? Like the most famous example of this is like Splinter Twin, right? Like playing a combo control kind of
Mm,
deck where you get to just play a control game and eventually assemble your combo finish and like when your opponent has been like run out of answers and run out of like threats as well. Combo aggro is a bit less natural of a pairing because aggro decks naturally don't want the game to go that long, so you have less time to assemble your combo. But undeniably, these Boros energy and well, I guess Ajani does not use energy, but these Boros MH3 cards are
right.
too powerful not to play. So
Yeah.
they provide the mid range plan to go along with the combo.
Yeah, we see Edwin taking a bit of a mulligan here. I think there was just not really enough lands. I think 22 lands in this Naya deck. So there are definitely enough. Well, at least I guess we would hope that there's enough for the deck to function properly. And this one looking a little bit better. There is a plains, I think, also an elegant parlor in there. Blade Path to Exile, Extraction Specialist, and Safi Eric's daughter. So is that a bombardment or is that a galvanic discharge hiding
I
out?
believe that's a galvanic discharge. So puts Flage to the bottom, makes some amount of sense. Kind of looking
Okay.
to assemble the combo, I assume, and use Path to prevent Bruce from getting anywhere too scary.
Okay. I mean, it's a hand with a plan, right? Like there's two combo pieces, two removal spells. Let's see what you have, Bruce. And Bruce is going to be fetching on one. I think I saw the Psychic Frog in hand.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think Edwin is also missing a green source in addition to the Summoner
Mm,
bombardment, and the Safi is in hands this time, not nicely surveilled into the graveyard. So you will need to find a way to cast
wow. Surveilling the Safi is just so sweet.
that.
Just any time you can use that surveil to do something that you really actually actively want to do, just feels like such a win.
Yeah, basically casting Entomb there.
Wow. You heard it here first. Surveil lands basically into.
Exactly, exactly.
All right. So the players are going to just pass it back a little bit. Edwin says, "How about a Johnny?" And Bruce says, "How about no?" Stern scolding on a Johnny, by the way, is giving me like visions of me yelling at my cats for eating plastic. I have to assume that that's the flavor of what's going on here.
Basically, yes,
Yeah.
basically.
Uh-huh.
Next up, I assume, assuming Edwin finds his third land, we'll see a extraction specialist on the stack, and I wonder if that will also be sternly scolded.
Interesting. Bruce fetches up another undercity sewers, entombs another land, and we are going. Oh my god, Bruce's hand just looks so sweet. Like there's counter spells, there's the frog. I think there's a bowmasters. I'm not entirely sure there. There's preordain. I mean, honestly, this is just the dream.
I think I saw Murktide and another spell going to the bottom, perhaps looking for lands, but he did bin a land or entomb a land off of the surveil land.
Right.
So
Oh no,
not
here we go.
okay.
It's all right. It's the
I'm not
MDFC. Yeah.
exactly sure what Bruce is looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. He put the Murktide back, right? Maybe looking
Yeah,
for an answer to a goblin bombardment?
maybe looking for, I don't know, just more premium interaction since he already has this threat in Psychic Frog locked up, though he doesn't know that Edwin has a path.
Hmm. So Edwin's turn now. Let's see whether he found a third land. Did not find a third land. Well, we don't know yet, but prismatic ending is going to be the removal of choice. And yeah, no third land drop, no green source for that Safi Eric's daughter, and no third land to even make this extraction specialist happen. Drown in the luck for Bruce.
A drown, a spell bomb. Is that another consider? I can
Yeah,
barely
I
make
think
out the
so.
cards.
All right. So Bruce's deck really firing on all cylinders, but kind of just spinning wheels at this point. Although, just as I say that, of course, the Murktide region in hand is going to be played, and that's a lot of spells. Like Bruce put a bunch of cantrips in the graveyard, 4+1/+1 counters, and all of a sudden Edwin is on a massive clock here. Though I think we know that Edwin does have the path in hand to deal with this.
Nice to get rid of two big threats on Bruce's side. Bruce doesn't have that many of them in his deck. Only like 4 frogs, 4 Murktides, and some, I guess, some number of Bowmasters do count, and the 2 subtleties. But
Right.
really, if the Murktide deck doesn't stick a Murktide or Psychic Frog, it's not going anywhere too quickly. Though, of course, it doesn't need to. It has a lot of interaction. It can slow down the game and find more.
Hmm. Let's see what Bruce does and whether Bruce can find another big threat soon. It is just a land for turn, but never fear. Consider is here. God, I love consider.
The
I'm like one of these like real nerds, Jason. Every set when the spoiler comes out, I don't really look at the rares and mythics. I really just look at what cantrips did they give us and what counter spells did they give us.
I
That's all I
mean,
care.
those are very important, right? Like everyone loves big flashy mythics, but the like bread and butter removal spells, cantrips that just make your deck work. Like Phoenix would not be a deck in Pioneer without 12 good cantrips, right?
Right,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And
So
Edwin here finds the third land, goes to get Stomping Ground, and we did see Bruce, by the way, fatal push that Guide of Souls away. That's a no to the Extraction Specialist.
at this point,
Sorry,
So at this point, the question on Bruce's mind has got to be, how can I find a threat, right? Like, how can I actually close this game? He has a pile of interaction in his hand, but it's not necessarily going to stay that way forever, right? He doesn't actually have a source of card advantage. And in fact, this blue-black
Mm.
deck doesn't have that many sources of card advantage. Kind of only Psychic Frog. And eventually something from Edwin's is going to stick. And like most of the threats on Edwin's side are uh, pretty good at like taking care of the game by themselves, or close to
Mm.
by themselves at the very least.
All right. So Edwin gets the Safi Eric's daughter countered, and then Bruce then untaps, drops the spell bomb. So a nice little bit of hiding information there from Bruce, waiting for the combo pieces, then playing the spell bomb. And Edwin is now finding a few more lands. Let's see what he has to work with here. Now, you mentioned Bruce's deck, if it doesn't have a source of card advantage or a big threat, it's kind of maybe potentially going to run out of gas here. But what can Edwin's deck do to take advantage of that?
I mean, the real thing is just throwing things out there and like running Bruce out of interaction, and then finally sticking something, right? Like just hoping that you're playing, you're playing a bunch of surveil lands that gives you some amount of filtering to like help not flood. Of course, the Dimir deck is also going to be playing a bunch of surveil lands as well, but at some point, it is not quite possible to just keep lining up answers to your opponent's threats, because a lot of the answers in Bruce's hand are going to be somewhat specialized and they don't always
Right.
work. And the subtlety is now pretty big because, it's a 3/3 flyer, which is not the fastest clock in the world. It's, 5-6 turns, but that's still something. So now Edwin has the obligation to get the game going somewhere, right? Like, and not just cast one thing every turn into Bruce's threats. Okay, he has an answer now. So
Mm.
that's good. The board is now back at parity, right? But like it's just this jockeying of position of like seeing who can get something to stick first, right? And
Mm.
Edwin has been really good at preventing all of Bruce's threats, and Bruce the same in the other direction. But something at some point is going to stick.
All right. So we're going to see Edwin play that extraction specialist that he left on top from the Sassel Sea. That's going to prompt Bruce to crack the Nile spell bomb. Away goes Edwin's graveyard. Specialist comes down. It's just a 3/2 with lifelink. And Bruce, meanwhile, still no threat. Drown in the Luck in hand. I believe Fatal Push in hand. Oh, and there's a Bowmasters.
Yeah, a 3/2 isn't anything great, and neither is 2/1/1s, but they do represent, like, again, like just getting something onto the board, right? Like something to present at least a bit of a clock. Now the 2/1/1s can now at least trade, or for some reason the one of the 1/1s is coming in. I assume this is trying to get Revolt for a fatal push, or at least represent that. Just like getting those small
Uh,
edges.
Yeah, or a second Bowmasters would also let this
True.
goblin, it's not goblin army, oh my goodness, orc army, of course, amass again and trade with the specialist. So Edwin says, I'll just take the one for now. I'm going to go back to my turn. Let's see what happens here. Edwin really needs to find something, though. I mean, Bowmaster's now on the bat. Oh, and a Johnny. I think that might count as finding something.
Yeah, and he has got to assume that the coast is somewhat clear since his 3/2 extraction specialist did resolve. And like obviously it was just a 3/2 lifelink, but like even a 3/2 lifelink on an empty board is pretty good. So like Bruce probably would have interacted in some way if he could have. So the fact that he
Mm.
didn't means the coast is probably clear for this Ajani as it was. And like, this Ajani making two bodies, one of them gets pushed, but leaves behind a 2/1. Again, all of these interactions leaving behind just a little bit in Edwin's favor. And if Bruce
Mm.
doesn't find a big threat soon, well, the game is going to keep going in that direction and more towards Edwin's favor.
Right, and Edwin's going to keep taking the damage from this orc army. Pretty interesting that Ajani did come down, and if Edwin had a goblin bombardment on the battlefield at that point, like it would be so different. Right? We'd be talking about a different game, but without the goblin bombardment, oh, what about second Ajani, Jason?
Yeah, second Ajani is really good. Now you can attack with the cat and just have no worries for if it dies, right? Just send the cat in. If it's a trade, that's a very, very good trade for you. You get to flip your Ajani. Maybe
Mm,
Bruce will have another Fatal Push, another interaction spell here. Looks like there is
yeah,
another Fatal Push and
there's both Fatal
another
Push and
Drown.
Drown.
Yeah, but a Drown got turned off a bit by a bit of a nombo between Niall Spellbomb and Drown in the Loch. Right now, there's only one card in the graveyard on Edwin's side, so Drown not doing much, but this Fatal Push will do something here.
Okay, so Bruce is gonna put the Bowmasters in front of Specialist. Edwin gains 3, Bruce takes 2, and then now there is Revolt available. Fatal Push the Specialist. So Bruce. There we go. And now the second card in the graveyard. That's going to allow Drown in the Lock to take out a Johnny. So Bruce figuring out the line there to get both the big threats off the board, but Edwin still left with a pair of 2/1 cats and gets to pass over. And Jason, this is exactly the situation you were describing here. Murktide not able to find a big threat, not able to find the card advantage. And now Edwin is kind of just slowly, piece by piece, finding the ability to build up a board here, putting another Ajani into play with Extraction Specialist. And oh my goodness, Extraction Specialist Ajani, by the way, hilarious. Yeah, I don't want this Ajani to attack anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and we see. I think Bruce just has 2 lands now, just completely flooding out. Like without the big threats, he's just been 1-for-1ing uh, Edwin's plays. But Edwin's plays have all been 2-for-1s, right? Like all of these
Right.
Ajanis, that's where all these cats came from, right? That's why there's all of these cats on the battlefield because Edwin has just repeatedly played Ajanis that have all been killed, but all left something behind.
Mm.
Um,
And
yeah.
okay, well, we're back over to Edwin. Oh, Malevolent Rumble? Love to see that. Straight out of MH3 Limited.
Yeah, I gotta love Ponder. One of my favorite commons in MH3 Limited.
Let's have a look at the top 4 cards. Puts a Goblin Bombardment in hand. That gets to resolve, and now we're gonna see the next level of this deck, Jason.
Yeah, we don't quite have the combo. There's no Safi to be found, but you get to do the classic Boros, MH3 good cards pile, and put a flipped Ajani in play with another red permanent, which is the Goblin Bombardment, and now you just get to keep shooting down. Like this is 5 damage this turn off of 5 creatures with
Oh
Ajani is
yeah,
0.
that's
Make a
just
two
going
one
face.
yeah, make a 2/1, then shoot something for damage equal to the number of creatures you control. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Completely ignoring the Psychic Frog, just going face,
Yeah,
which
I love it.
understandable, lots of pressure.
Yeah, and then we're gonna see Edwin still just pass the turn back. Doesn't really feel the need to get aggressive. Knows that he has lethal multiple ways next turn, and Bruce really needs to find a toxic deluge here or something that uh, can get these creatures off the battlefield. Discards 2 cards to Psychic Frog. It looks like. What does that do?
I think he's gonna try to go for the Ajani, and I do like Edwin's play here of just like being patient and not just like sacking your board for the presumed lethal because something could go wrong. There's like 2 cards in hand.
Right.
Meanwhile, like if you just pass to Bruce and and then if Bruce passes back fully, you get to activate the Johnny for lethal. So Bruce has to pressure the Johnny, has to spend resources doing that. And meanwhile, you still have lethal looming on board, so you're still like holding Bruce hostage in one way or another.
So
Also,
there's the
wait, did
toxic there's the
did
toxic deluge. Wait, isn't this just okay? Edwin
okay?
let the Ajani go, and here we go. All right. Edwin says, "Ping you once, ping you all these other times. That's it.
Yep.
Game 2 going to Edwin, Yvonne with Naya Aggro, and we're going to get to see a decider between these two decks, which I am very, very pleased about, Jason, because I want to see more of this action.
Yeah, yeah, this is a pretty interesting matchup. The thing I was, okay, this was what I was confused by because I didn't actually know that Psychic Frog triggered the card draw when it dealt damage to a Planeswalker. So I was being very confused why there was a second card in hand all of a sudden. But no, it does actually have that text, which is
Oh,
wild, and not
I
many things
see.
say deal combat damage to a player or Planeswalker. Usually, it's only to players.
Right. Yeah, it does say all Planeswalker on it. Okay. All right. That makes sense. And I think we did see, by the way, Bruce exile the 3 cards in the graveyard to give the frog flying as well, which is why you didn't see a block on the frog. So we are going to game 3. Now, Jason, we got Bruce back on the play this time. How important is the play draw dynamic between these two decks?
Well, the Dimir Murktide deck really, really likes being on the play because like it's all about establishing your cheap threat, in either Psychic Frog, which you want to play on turn 2, or Murktide, which you probably want to play like around turn 4-ish, so that you can slam your big threat into play and also keep mana open for interaction. And just
Hmm.
being on the play, having access to more mana quicker, just lets you establish your engine so much quicker and like establish your engine hopefully with protection, so that it doesn't just get removed like we saw in the previous game. All three of Bruce's attempted threats just got removed and Bruce ran out of gas. So being on
Mm.
the play just lets you do that all the quicker before your opponent has the chance to answer your threats, and that just lets you snowball further and further, right?
Mm. I mean, both of these decks do seem kind of snowbally. Edwin with the Naya aggro. I mean, we saw him really build that board up over the course of 2 or 3 turns in that last game. But once it's going with the Ajanis, with the Goblin Bombardment, it does seem like, gravity is going to do its thing.
Yeah. I mean, of course, every single deck in Modern, or every single deck, like, in basically all formats, loves being on the play, right? Just the tempo advantage is generally worth way more than the card, right? But the Mirrored Murktide deck, I think, is just especially happy with being on the play because it is even more of a snowball deck. Like, a Johnny, great card. It's going to get some value, but the value it gets is like not necessarily like turn by turn, right? Like,
Mm.
yes, once it flips, you get to activate it every turn, but like generally, what happens when a Johnny hits the battlefield is like your opponent interacts with it, or especially in this matchup, your opponent just kills it, right? And
Mm.
the value you're getting is from the 2/1 that leaves behind.
Mm.
Whereas on the other side, Bruce really wants to stick this Psychic Frog that will get value every turn it's on the battlefield, and hopefully with protection so that it just never can get removed, right? And
Mm.
that's just
All
so much
right.
easier to do on the play.
All right. Well, Chris was on the play. We saw a pretty nice hand there from both players. Well, it was definitely a keep from both players. Bruce with, I believe, the Psychic Frog, and there was some counterspell action, some card draw action. The same old, same old. Edwin, Edwin with, I think, quite a few lands this time around. Prismatic Ending, there being a little bit of interaction, extraction special. I think 2 copies of Prismatic Ending. So Edwin is ready for the frog.
I also saw a Nile Spellbomb in both players' hands, so Murktide and the combo are less going to be online this game, presumably,
Mm.
with graveyard interaction on both sides.
Yeah, I think it's a Soul Guide Lantern for Edwin, but same
Oh,
deal.
yeah, yes, yes.
Same deal.
Of course, you would not put Nile Spellbomb as your graveyard hate of choice in a deck without black mana.
Well, okay, look, Edwin has 4 copies of Aether Hub. No, 2 copies of Aether Hub.
Okay, that's fair. That's
I
fair.
take that back. Never count out the Aether Hub. But yeah, Edwin definitely playing the Soul Guide Lantern. Gonna be fetching Lush Portico. Put that extra land in the graveyard. Don't need that one. And Bruce has the Psychic Frog down. Like, I think we're expecting really to see this frog go down to one of those prismatic endings. And Bruce kind of has to rebuild again. I don't I think there was a Bowmasters there, Jason, but not another big threat.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to run out your Psychic Frog on turn 2 because of course you want to get the ball rolling as fast as possible. But of course the downside is now you're tapped out. Now you can't protect your frog unless you have something like Force of Negation, which
Mm.
unfortunately Bruce did not have in this case.
Mm. All right, Edwin's going to be passing it back. Here comes Bowmasters in the end step. Makes its friend. And this one, a little bit slower here for Edwin. Not really equipped with many threats in hand. I don't know if we saw really any. Maybe a copy of Extraction Specialist. But other than that, looking a bit more interactive, a bit more reactive as a hand.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's not going to line up quite as well with Bruce's draw. Like, if you don't have anything to pressure Bruce to spend the interaction, you're just and you just let Bruce hit you with a bunch of 1/1s here. And Wynn's not going to be able to really do much about that. Like, you can't really like use your premium spot removal on these 1/1s. Uh,
Mm.
and I guess if you have to, as your life total is getting very low, then you will. But you really need to put up some amount of pressure for a Bruce to interact, to use the cards in his hand, to like make something happen.
All right, let's see if Edwin can make something happen here. 3 mana being tapped. He doesn't like it though. Really trying to rethink it.
Yeah,
And
neither of the 3 drops are ideal into Nile Spellbomb.
right, I don't think there's even anything in the graveyard to get back with a specialist right now. So Edwin's just gonna say, okay, what if I play a Soul Guide Lantern? And I'm just gonna think about it. Yeah, okay, that's going away.
Yeah, I suspect Bruce doesn't have a Murktide in hand anyways, and that mostly what this Soul Guide Lantern is doing is like keeping that Murktide in, keeping possible Murktides in check, right?
Hmm. Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You want to be managing your opponent's graveyard, these Murktide decks. So, Jason, is Dimir kind of the favored Murktide build now? Are we moving away from Is it generally?
Um, I'm not entirely sure, and of course, like after the ban
Mm.
announcement next week, presumably many things will change. But I have
Mm.
been seeing more Dimir Murktide lists than Is It Murktide lists, mostly because of the power of Psychic Frog, right? Like, Is
Mm.
It is good and all. Like, you have Ragavan, you have Dragon Rage Channeler, you have powerful red burn spells, but Psychic Frog is also quite a banger from MH3.
Hmm. All right. So Edwin's going to be cycling away this Solar Lantern.
And gets
Oh,
pinged by the
yeah.
Bowmaster.
Ouch. Didn't like that. Edwin down to 11, so still kind of healthy, but does have to watch out a little bit. Meanwhile, passing back over, Bruce has just every piece of interaction he could ever want in hand. I believe that was a Safi drawn for Edwin. So want to see this get counted. And hopefully wants to, of course, resolve that extraction specialist if possible.
Counterspell into counterspell. Pretty nice. And also very nice for Bruce to be able to burn this drown in the lock on something that really matters before cracking this spell bomb, so he doesn't
Hmm.
run into the same issue he did last game.
Excellent sequencing there from Bruce, who now has 3 power on the battlefield. Getting in, Edwin goes down and has to find something now to kind of battle against what Bruce has put together. It's been scrappy, Jason. It's been very 1 for 1. It's been very scrappy here in this matchup.
And like here we see, again, Bowmaster is not the most threatening of threats, but it's just getting there, right? Like when Bruce just has all of these 1-for-1s and Edwin just hasn't been able to pressure enough to make Bruce like run out of answers.
Mm.
Bruce is just able to easily keep the board clear, except for a couple creatures that are just going to eventually take over the game.
So Edwin says, I'm going to prismatic ending X equals 0. Target your orc army. Get the most threatening creature the 2/2 off the battlefield. Oh, and Bruce says, no, I need to keep this 2/2. I'm going to kill you with it. Back to my turn. I love it. This is the kind of magic I love the most. Let's have a multi-stack battle over the 2/2 Orc Army. Edwin's down to 4 life, needs to find something. Bruce, I believe, left with Consider, Fatal Push, Drown, so lots and lots of interaction. Oh, what does Edwin find?
Another extraction specialist. So
Edwin's so good at finding extraction. I mean, like, jeez.
well, again, we're seeing this issue of this can't be drowned because there was a very recent Nile Spellbomb, and it might need to require another chump attack into Revolt Fatal Push. But if Edwin
What's
doesn't,
happening in modern, by the way? People, when someone says, "Oh, come cast modern," usually I'm thinking, okay, it's gonna be, Amulet Titans, it's gonna be Trot, it's gonna be like crazy things happening. I love this. I love this. Preordain, one on top, one on the bottom. Oh, there's a Murktide.
yeah, and that's probably going to close out the game here. Not it doesn't look like Edwin has any interaction. He demonstrated his willingness to use a prismatic ending on this orc army, so I assume if he had another one he would have tried again.
Right.
So this Murktide probably going to take over the skies and take over the game.
All right. So Bruce just keeping going right now with these cantrips. Fill up the graveyard. Has 2 mana remaining. Found, I believe, a Soporific Spring, so can shock that in to be an untapped source, playing the Murktide and leaving the counter spell up. Gonna go for the attack first.
Yep, looks like another chump attack, letting Edwin gain 1 life overall for the privilege of fatal pushing here.
Fatal Push takes down the specialist. Edwin, I believe, gained 3 and took 2. And
And here comes the Murktide, Regent of the Skies.
it's pretty scary. That's a big Murktide. Let's see what Edwin. I mean, I think we know that Edwin doesn't have the path in hand.
Probably not. And with only 1 card in hand, no combo pieces to be seen on the battlefield or in the graveyard, it's going to be pretty tough. And yep, there we see the handshake.
Okay,
GG.
so Bruce Lee with Dimir Murktide taking the win here in round number 5 against Edwin Ebon with this super cool Naya Aggro combo deck. And Dimir Murktide ruling the skies and currently ruling the standings. And I think Bruce will be pretty happy to be advancing into round 6 with a 5-0 record here, Jason. 6-2 to make day 2. Both of these players, of course, still very much on track with that.
Yeah. 4-1, still pretty good. Just need to go 2-1 from here.
Okay, so that's going to do it for our main feature match from round number 5. We're going to go away to a very short break. When we come back, we will have backup magic from this round for you. Don't go anywhere. More magic after this short break.